Assalamu alaikum class. Today we're going to continue with our session on research design, which is lecture number 8. Last session we talked about some of the issues related to the research design, and we said that research design is to do with the planning aspect of research. Before we actually conduct the research, we want to make sure that we do some kind of planning, and we sit down and try to decide as to what sort of direction we will take in terms of in the future to conduct our research. And there are different issues we said we're going to talk about, and we need to talk about before we actually conduct the research. These issues require certain decisions which will influence the direction of our research. Some of the things we talked about last time, where we said that we looked at the purpose of research. We need to decide as if our research was exploratory in nature or descriptive in nature or hypothesis testing in nature. And we said that this is depends on the level or the extent of information or knowledge that particular area has. If it's something new, the purpose of research would be of exploratory. If it's something which we already know, but we need to understand a little more, we need to understand in terms of its characteristics, then it's going to be descriptive in nature. And if the research is advanced and we are at a stage of developing certain theories, then we will basically conduct what we call as an hypothesis testing. So the purpose of the research in that case would be hypothesis testing. And another thing we also talked about was we need to identify what is the type of investigation, and we said that if there are multiple variables, and we wanted to see if the effect of the multiple variables on the dependent variable, then we would say it's a correlational study. If it's just a causal, if there is one variable, we want to delineate that this is the actual and the only cause of change in the dependent variable, then our investigation would be of a causal nature. And then we said that the extent of researcher interference is going to be also discussed, which should be discussed, because that again there is the decision as to if the impact of the interference of the researchers is high or low will basically indicate the kind of resources will be required in terms of conducting the research, and the time required for conducting research, effort, time, these all basically we need to think about. And if the researcher has a high level interference, that is, we are saying that the researcher will be trying to not just simply observe and collect simple data from the files, but actually will be manipulating certain variables to see the effect of that. And we said the interference could be low if just the researcher is basically in a corner trying to observe certain flow of certain data and certain incidences, and collect certain data from the files. Then the interference is low to moderate to low, where little interference is conducted by the researcher. Few other aspects of the research design need to be discussed before we actually conduct the research. One aspect is what we call as the study setting. Briefly, we talked about this setting, not with this particular terminology, but we said that the environment in which the researcher conducts the research, it could be either contrived or non-contrived. What we mean by contrived is something which is artificial in nature, which the researcher has artificially created to conduct the research. And if the research environment where the data is being collected is a natural environment, then we say it is a non-contrived research. So a contrived research is research where the researcher creates an area which is specially designed for research. Then it's an artificial environment, and we say that it is a contrived research. The study setting is contrived. On the other hand, if the study setting if the research is conducted in the normal natural environment, then we say it's a non-contrived study setting. On the other hand, you also, we briefly talked about that, while we are conducting a causal side type of a research, then the study setting will be contrived. Otherwise, other than that, it's not possible, because you said in causal scenario we're focused on one particular variable affecting the dependent variable, and the only way you can make sure that in real life that only one variable is affecting the dependent variable while we control all the other variables. Otherwise, in real life, we cannot narrow down the effect of one variable, because there are so many variables which affect ourselves, and to just narrow down to one variable, it requires some effort, and for that we need to have what we call as an artificial environment. Other than that, if you're conducting research in the normal setting, then we say it is considered as a non-contrived setting. So generally, when we say correlational studies, they are conducted in a non-contrived setting, because we have multiple variables, and effect of those multiple variables is being considered and is being studied. And whereas when we say it's a causal study, we're more focused on what we call as the lab setting, or what we call as a contrived lab setting. So there is there's some sub-classification of the study settings. Studies such as the correlation studies done in organizations are called field studies. This is again further qualification of that if the studies are conducted in the field, and it's a correlation type of a study, and the field meaning the organization, if the studies are conducted in the organization, then we say they are field studies, because actually the study was conducted in the real field. Either it's a bank, or it's an office, or it's in the government office, or it's a factory. This is a field where you actually go and collect some data on that. But this kind of study is called a field study. So we basically, an example could be that we want to look at the factors of influencing the call center and its employees' turnover. So we basically try to go to a particular call center or number of call centers in the field and try to find out what are the factors which are influencing its turnover. So in that scenario, we're looking at different factors, 1, 2, 3, 4 factors, which might influence the dependent variable, which is their turnover. So we in this case, when we are saying that, there are different factors which are influencing factor 1, factor 2, factor 3, which might influence the dependent variable, and we basically go to the actual field, try to collect some information based on that. Generally, the sort of data we collect is through interviews, generally through questionnaires, and maybe from some secondary source of data, such as the turnover data could be obtained from the organization's HRM files, where they keep record of how many people have left the organization in the last year or so, and then through interviews, through questionnaires, one could find out what are the different factors which is influencing the turnover of the employees. So in this case, this study setting would be considered as a field study. Of course, it's what we consider as generally as a non-contrived environment. Studies which try to establish the cause and effect relationship, and if we try to do it in the natural environment, then we say they are field experiment, because they are experiments. Why? Because we are trying to establish cause and effect. We're trying to manipulate. The moment we try to manipulate certain variables, increase or decrease the case we gave earlier in the last session, we said that the CEO was asked to increase the pay of certain department and decrease the pay of a certain department and keep the pay of one department as constant. There again, the manipulation was there but the data was manipulated not in a lab but in actually in the field. So whenever there is a manipulation of the independent variables, it is a change and manipulation of the independent variable, you tend to see that it is an experiment, and and if the manipulation is done in the actual field, that in certain organizations itself, not in a lab, not an purely artificial environment, then this is called a field experiment. Another example could be that employees who have been giving recognition and employees who have been not giving recognition, we could see their motivation level, their performances. So in certain section of the organization, or certain people in the organization were given recognition, some were not given recognition, deliberately to see what is the effect or it will have on their performances. But again, if you see, this is an experiment when you try to manipulate by deliberately not giving a recognition and giving recognition. There is some experiment going on, but if it's conducted within the context or purview of an organization itself, then it is called a field experiment. A cause-effect study, on the other hand, we said that usually it is, of course, where some kind of an experiment is going on, but the focus is more on what we call as a lab experiment, because what we try to do is in the external factors which are in the environment, they are controlled. When we say they are controlled, by that we mean we try to make them as constant. Suppose we want to see we want to see the output of certain employees based on the training. We could say that we could select all the new employees with the same score in the entry test, and provide one group training, the training, and the other no training. In that sense, what we've tried to do is we're controlling that and they are not exposed to senior employees who can guide them. Meaning, we're trying to say is that we're trying to give trainings to the employees, but making sure that the training given to both the groups are not influenced by the senior, which can affect their output. So when we select these new employees with the same score, when we say same score, meaning with same IQ or same entry test scores or same entry test exam, we control this variable, because it is possible that the effect of training on the output of the employees could be not just because that the output was increased because of the training, but maybe the employee itself was much smarter. To make sure that the effect of the individuals being smart or not smart, or the effect of other people like the senior people coming in to help to help and do their job. If we want to control that, we want to make sure that their effect is not influenced. What we tend to do is we try to completely control the scenario and see and control the other variables which might affect, by neutralizing them, by making them as constant. That is, hiring employees, all new employees, with this, and giving trainings to just employees with the same level of IQ or scores in the entry, could be a way of controlling the external factors. Another example one could look at while we're saying it's a lab experiment is that if you were asked to see, a banker would like to ask to see what will the effect of investment will be in terms of the different interest rates. What could do is hire or select few final year MBA students who are then basically put in a lab where they are given some play money to see how they invest. In that scenario, the different groups are given the same amount of money, and in that scenario, and made sure that all these groups have the same skill set, making sure that they have all the different sets, and by increasing and decreasing the interest rates offered for investment, the investment output could be checked as to how investment is related with interest rates, whereby we developed a lab experiment scenario, where we handpicked our own people. We handpicked, made sure that they were given the same amount of money. The only thing we manipulated was the interest rate given to these different groups. So 3-4 different groups could have been formed, handpicked by the researcher, making sure that they don't have any special or extra information which all the other groups have, other groups don't have. So this makes sure that the other controlling factors, may be information or prior training or prior knowledge, is different. We make sure the knowledge is same, information is same, the amount of money they have is the same. It is purely we want to see in terms of investment, if a group is given more interest rate, would they spend, they will invest more, or a group which is given a lower interest rate will invest less. So in this scenario, what we did was we tried to control all the other factors in a lab experiment, making sure that no other variable effects other than the change of interest rates given to these 4 or 5 different groups, and seeing what sort of investment they do. So in this case, this is a lab experiment whereby just one variable is manipulated, but other variables are kept constant. Another research design issue which we need to focus on is what we call as the unit of analysis. All the data generally, when we collect, generally is collected at the individual level, but it is the analysis level at a higher level when we accumulate this data and we start doing the analysis of the data. That analysis level could be different, such as sometimes you need to do analysis at the individual level, meaning that if you want to study the effect of let's say the motivation or the effect of motivation on the performance, we collect data on motivation level from different employees, and we want to see the effect of that on the performance. Here the data form of the motivation level is obtained at the individual level from different employees. But if the same study, if the objective of the study was to see the group dynamics of the group dynamics of the individuals, then what we need to do is we need to accumulate the individual level data into a higher level, what we call as the group level data or organizational level data or cultural level data. But the unit of analysis, while we're analyzing the data, would be different. What I mean by that, let's look at this definition a little bit. A unit of analysis refers to the level of aggregation of data collected during the subsequent data analysis stages. So it is basically aggregation of data, although as we said that the data is collected at the individual level, but while doing the analysis, it depends that what sort of analysis we want. Do you want to have a group level analysis, that just as the studies examples we had, where we said that the motivation level of men is more than motivation level of women. There the data was collected or at the individual level initially, but at the analysis level it was grouped into men and women. So, did you get the point here? We need to decide as to what kind of unit of analysis we'll be doing. Will it be at men and women level? Will it be done at the organizational level? We want to find out performance of the organization. So, or we want to find out the performance of an industry. Then again, the unit of analysis in that case would be industry or organization or individuals or groups or men and women, but that is depends on the plan you have in terms of the analysis. So in the individual level, we said that if the problem statement focuses on how to raise the motivation level of employees in general, then we are interested in the individual level of analysis. Okay, so if it's just at the individual level, we want to find out the individual level, we want to find out the motivation level of employees, then the unit of analysis is individual. But if we want to do the level of analysis at the gender level, then again motivation level of men would be required separately. Their aggregation need to be done, and same thing, aggregation at the women level will be required in case we want to do some sort of analysis at the group level. An example is that if you want to see what are the factors which influence the success of the project, again, if you want to look at the different factors which might influence the success of a project, then again, this is the unit of analysis there would be an individual one. At the dyad level, there is another unit of analysis. Here, basically, if the researcher is interested in studying the two persons interaction, then several two persons groups is known as dyads. So when we have two persons, basically we need to do an analysis at the two level, then becomes the unit of analysis is considered as dyad. An example for that is that if you want to find out, let's say, the way the parents feel about the school the child is going to, the input of the father and the mother in both in the case of how the school is or what how the school environment is, their both input is required. In that case, the unit of analysis will be considered as a dyad. Similarly, if you want to discuss the benefits of mentoring with the mentor and the mentee together, the person who's being given some guidance, you want to find out if there is getting any benefits out of that. And similarly, you want to speak to the mentor who's giving the guidance, you need to speak to that person as well. In that case, the unit of analysis is considered as dyad, where both their opinions is required to be accumulated, and based on that you do an analysis, because individually what a father believes how the school is doing, how the school's education is there or the environment is there is not good enough, or how the mother feels is not good enough. In that kind of study where you want to find out how does the parent feel about the environment of the school, the input of both is important. So accumulating these things together will provide you what we call as a dyad level of analysis, because as the individual, as just considering as although the data collected at this for this kind of a study is collected at individual level, that is the mother and the father, the mentor and the mentee, but you need to accumulate them together, and then while accumulating, then you do the analysis. So at the analysis level, one is required to accumulate them either at group level, at dyad level, which is two people. At group level, there could be multiple groups, multiple individuals in that group, or at an organizational level, or at the culture level, or at the country level. But the accumulation is done. But the actual data might be collected at the individual level, but the accumulation is done at the different levels, such as dyad, group, cultures, or organization. As we said that earlier, that at the group level, if the problem statement is related to the group effectiveness, however, then the obvious unit of analysis. So again, if what we want to see is the motivation level of men versus women, or the performance of blue collar workers versus the performance of white collar workers, or the loyalty of blue collar workers versus loyalty of white collar workers, here the problem statement is basically indicating that the unit of analysis would be at a certain group, and the group is white collar workers or blue collar workers, men and women, first year students, second year students, whatever. So the analysis would be done at the group level, but the data will be collected at the individual level. In the case of, again, in this case, the data, when we're saying the loyalty, we will basically collect individually and establish the loyalty of the blue collar workers separately, one by one. And then we accumulate all the blue collar workers, their loyalty level, and then compare the loyalty level with the white collar workers, which we had accumulated separately. So again, coming to the main point is at the group level, again, it is the problem statement which will give us that at what level of analysis we'll be doing. And at the organizational level, we say if you compare different departments and their output, we want to find out their satisfaction level per department or their committedness to the organization. If this is what we want to find out, we will say no, the sales department is more committed, or the computer science department has a better loyalty level or much higher motivation level as compared to the management science department. Then the research itself, or the research question itself, is indicating the kind of analysis we'll be needing. Of course, again, it stems from that we need to, at the individual level, we need to collect the data, and once we are able to collect that data, we are then at a higher level accumulate it and do the analysis. So if a computer science department loyalty level is compared to the management science loyalty level, we need to first of all individually collect the data from individuals working in the computer science department and working in the management science department separately. The same, again, analysis could be done at the cultural levels. If we want to study cultural differences among nations, we will have to collect data from different countries and study the underlying patterns of cultures in each country. Here the unit of analysis would be culture. So if we want to compare cultures with versus the other culture, we need to find out individuals in each of these cultures and try to see what are their patterns, what are their different moral values, what are their different cultural and social values. And if this is the analysis we want to find out, again, the unit of analysis here will be cultures. The example I think we had earlier talked about, that the moral values of Eastern Western culture are different, and they might be different at different levels. So we need to make sure that we are clear as to if the unit of analysis is cultural or organizational or dyad or group. Whatever the level is, we need to have prior hand clear decision as to what kind of level of analysis is required, because that's will affect our actual implementation of research. If we are comparing data between organizations, so we cannot just collect data from just one organization and do an analysis on that, because the purpose of research was to do an organizational level analysis. For that, again, we need to make sure we collect data from different organizations and then compare them among each other. Similarly, if we are trying to compare between departments, we might have to make sure data is collected from all the other departments as well before analysis is done, so that we can do a comparison. So as far as the research design is concerned, again, this aspect where you need to know what is the unit of analysis, it will give you an idea that to what extent that sort of data need to be collected, and then later on what sort of test will be required to do the analysis whereby you establish the difference between different groups. So as we said, the unit of analysis is conducted at the individual level, at the dyad level, group level, organization and cultural level, but it basically is the aggregation of data of the data collected at the lower level. Certain again decision need to be made as to as far as what we call as the time horizon. Usually your research studies need to establish as to if your study is going to be cross-sectional versus a longitudinal study. When we say it's cross-sectional study, what we mean by that is that study that can be done in which data is gathered just once. Okay, just once, meaning perhaps over a period of days and weeks and months, but it's collected once, meaning the actual activity of collecting data might take few weeks or maybe days or maybe months, but it's just collected one time. It's not repeated. If it's not repeated, then it's called one-shot or cross-sectional study. For example, if you want to collect the project manager and their psychological well-being between the we want to find out how psychological well-being level of the manager is of a particular organization, of a particular sector, maybe the IT sector. If you want to find out what is the psychological well-being of the project managers in there for that particular sector or particular industry or particular organization or maybe a particular group, then that study is considered as cross-sectional, although it might take a few weeks or months before collecting data from all the people working in the IT sector, all the IT project managers working in the IT sector, but the data is just collected once, it's not repeated. So data collected on the psychological well-being of the IT managers, of IT project managers is maybe collected throughout the country, and might take few weeks or months to do that, but the data is not repeatedly collected, so hence this kind of study is considered as cross-sectional study. A longitudinal study is the study in that with some cases the researcher might want to study people and from at more than one point in time. So he wants to find out information information for more than one point in time. Just as example, that if we were just giving you earlier, that if the IT project managers, if we want to know how is their psychological well-being, we might find out as a cross-sectional, we might just say, okay, we just want to find out the psychological well-being of these IT project managers, but if we want to say that we want to link this study before the 9/11 and after the 9/11 scenario, because that is when a lot of projects were disbanded or which were discontinued in Pakistan. So if we would say that we want to find out what was the psychological well-being of the IT project manager before the 9/11 and after the 9/11 incident, or before let's say a certain event and after the certain event, in that case, if the psychological well-being of the IT managers is obtained twice at two different time frames, meaning two different points in time, then it's considered as a longitudinal study, meaning if the data was the data from the manager was obtained before and after a certain event, the same manager, then the study is considered as longitudinal study. Another example could be that we want to see the change in the employee's behavior before the top management, the new top management, and after the arrival of the top management. So if you want to see what was the behavior, if we have data on the behavior of employees before the top management is changed, and once the top management is changed, we again also conduct the same study repeated on the same employees after a while, then we say that this kind of study is what we call as a longitudinal study. Once again, we're saying that when the data on the dependent variable are gathered or at 2 points in time to answer the research question, then it's called a longitudinal study. An example could be the use of electricity by a city in summers and then in winter. So there is a gap, the same city, we're looking at the same city, the same households, and trying to see if there is a difference in the consumption of electricity of the same city at 2 different points in time. Okay, so so far what we had looked at, we had basically looked at the research design, some of the research design issues. We talked about the purpose of the study. We talked about the type of investigation. We talked about the extent of researchers' interference. We talked about the study settings, and we talked about the unit of analysis. Under the purpose of the study, what we said that the choices we have is we need to decide between it's going to be exploratory, is it going to be descriptive, or is it going to be hypothesis testing. So these are few of the choices we have to make before we actually start embarking on conducting the research or implementing the research. So we need to decide is it going to be exploratory, descriptive, or hypothesis testing. Another decision we need to make on is the type of investigation, if it's going to be causal or correlational study or a group difference study. I think we did not talk much about it, but generally we know that some of the studies we conduct, although we talked about that, we're trying to establish the relationship between certain variables, and the relationship could be of a causal nature or a correlational nature. We talked about that. But also sometimes we conduct studies in terms of finding the difference between the different groups. Again, that is again the type of investigation. We need to see if it's going to be a relational type, and within the relational type, is it going to be causal or correlational, or is it going to be of a group difference type of investigation. The extent of researcher interference we talked about was that we said that the choice we have is from minimum to high. In the minimum there is very little manipulation. On the high we have high manipulation. And in the study setting we said that the study setting would be contrived or non-contrived. When we say contrived, it is artificial setting, just like a lab. In a lab, when we have all the things controlled, the air, the oxygen, the light, the humidity, everything is controlled in the lab. Similarly, in the human lab, what we try to do is we control all the other factors which might influence, and we focus on just one variable and try to make sure that there is just there is change in just one variable. All the other variables are considered kept constant. But this requires a lot of effort and energy and time and resources to do that. Of course, very few studies in organism behaviors are developed around study settings, especially when we say that the study settings are either it's a field study or lab experiment, a field experiment or lab experiment. Lab experiments again need special settings, special funding, and similarly lab experiment, field experiment also needs special permissions and special cooperation from the field heads or the head of the organizations. Otherwise, this is not possible. So, by far, generally, the kind of studies we tend to do is what we call as field studies, where very little, which is a normal, natural environment, where very little manipulation is done by the management. Most of it is basically kept as it is. So basically, the study setting is again, and is one of the aspects which needs to be discussed and decided upon, because based on all this kind of discussions, we're able to assess as to the amount of effort will be required to conduct the research. We said also that the unit of analysis is also important. If we know prior to in our research questions, we are trying to establish some kind of group studies or organizational level studies or cultural level studies, that it indicates that we need to aggregate the data at a certain level, although they might be collected at the individual level, but then the data needs to be collected and aggregated. But again, that's also an indication as to the kind of the amount of data we need to collect. If it's we're saying if the data is collected and if the studies on departmental wise, we need to aggregate. Of course, we need to collect data on each department before we can compare the departments. Similarly, if you want to do a cultural study, compare cultures, again the data needs to be collected on all 4 or 5 different cultures we are trying to compare. So data needs to be collected on. So this is where you're seeing as terms of what is in the future you're going to do and the sort of effort which is required. Then we talked about the time horizon as well. Again, this is again indicates the amount of effort and which you need. If it's a one-shot study, you know, maybe it will take me 2, 3, 4 weeks to collect the data. But if it's collect the data, but it's going to be one shot, only one time. But if it's the data is longitudinal, you know that you need to access the individuals and the individuals before and after the study. So in a longitudinal study, you need to collect data at 2 or 3 or 4 different points in time and collect the data from the same units, the same individuals, the same organizations, because that's only when you will be able to establish that the study, the purpose of the study, which is most probably trying to establish the change which is before and after. So if you are trying to do a study where you're trying to look at the before and after effect, there again you need to see the you need to sit down and discuss talk about that, if the study is going to be longitudinal or one shot cross-sectional study. So this is what we had done so far. We need to, there are other things which we need to talk about in the research design is the measurements, and we need to mostly talk about the sampling design and data collection. These are again part of the research design. We need to talk about what sort of scales we will be using for collecting data, how we're going to collect the data, what are the different tools we're going to use to collect the data, such as observation, interviews, and questionnaire, and what kind of sampling techniques will be required. These all, again, 3 things are also part of the research design, but separate sections are dedicated to these 3 areas, and we'll be doing that in the coming few sessions and talk about these few sessions. But again, generally they all are part of what we call as the research design aspect. So it is a lot of planning is required at this level, and this is what we need to do before we actually start implementing. So once we are aware of some of the research design issues, let's have some examples, some scenarios, and see if we are able to identify the different research design choices. So what we need to make is, in the given scenarios, we want to find out and see what is the purpose of that study would be, or the type of investigation that study would be needed, and sort of interference. The research interference will be there, and study setting, what will be the study setting, the time horizon, unit of analysis, keeping all these different research design issues in mind, what we'll do is we'll look at some of the scenarios and see and plan as what will be the choices we have in terms of research design. So let's look at the scenario 1. In scenario 1, Mrs. Joyce Lynn, the owner of a small business, which is a women's dress boutique, a dress shop, has invited a consultant to her to tell her how she is different from the similar small businesses within the 60-mile radius. So what she has is a store, and she wants to basically find out how is her store different from the other similar stores in the 60-mile radius area. In regards to her the things she wants to compare and find out that how what are the other stores usage of computers, sales volume and profit margin and staff training. So she's interested to know that according to within the 60-mile radius, how she is different, how is their store different in terms of sales, in terms of profit, in terms of staff trainings, basically staff training, and computer technology usage. So there are different aspects she wants to see and compare. So she calls a consultant and she says that I want you to conduct a research whereby you find out that how is my store better or less in terms of profit, better or less in terms of training, better or less in terms of computer usage or profit margins. So she wants to do and ask the consultant to tell her about that. So what we find from this is that this is when we can say it's a descriptive study. Why this is descriptive? Because she wants to compare with the others data which is collected on small businesses, such as if they use computers or not, if they have what is the profit, what is their sales. So basically what you want to, the sort of data you're collecting here is you want to know the characteristics of the other businesses which are in this 40-60 miles radius. The study does not warrant that, or doesn't try to find out what a boutique is. The study is not about what is a clothing boutique is, but what she wants to find out is what are the other boutiques doing in terms of sales, how much are they making profits, how much are they have this training for computer training for employees, how much they spend in terms of the trainings, and what kind of usage they have in terms of computers. So these are more in terms of the characteristics she wants to find out about the other businesses and compare it with her own business. So this is what we call as a descriptive study. It's not, of course, an exploratory study by far, and neither you're trying to make here any theory. And we said if it is a theory, we are trying to make some prediction that her sales is she has more sales than the others, or she has less sales than the others, then that will be considered as a sort of a hypothesis testing. But nevertheless, she has not claimed that, and neither she wants to do that. All she wants to do is find out that what is the status of the other businesses in terms of their characteristics, in terms of their sales, profits, and so forth. So and this particular so some of this description might be qualitative, but again, nevertheless, the data is collected using from similar businesses. What about the researcher's interference? Of course, here the interference of the researcher is minimum, because the researcher collects the secondary data in terms of the sales of that stores, collects the data in terms of the trainings involved. She might, or the researcher might, go to these organizations, speak to their managers, speak to the management and find out what sort of trainings are being conducted or not. Other than that, she's not, or the researcher is not interfering with the normal flow of work, which is considered minimal. So the researcher interference is minimal, and as we see, it's a one-shot study. It's not that we're trying to say the data. We're not trying to collect before and after sort of a study. We're just going to collect what is the sales of profits, usage of computer, and trainings conducted at the stores close to her store. So it's a one-shot study. We're not repeating. We're not going to repeat the study before and after. There's no intention of doing that. So this is a one-shot study, and the unit of analysis in this case is small business systems. So this is one basically example scenario. Let's have a look at the other scenario. Okay, well, let's have a look at scenario B, where Mr. Paul Hodge, the owner of several restaurants. So he's got many restaurants. He's got several restaurants, and is concerned about the wide difference in the profits. So the problem he's facing is that he's got different restaurants and they have different profit margins. So, and he would like to try some incentives. He would like to see, he would try to change some incentive plans and increase the efficiency to see if it affects the efficiency or not. So he's an owner of different number of restaurants, and the problem he's seeing is the profit margin vary from one restaurant to the other. He would see, what he's trying to see is that if he increases the incentives of a certain of the restaurants, he wants to see if it affects the efficiency of those restaurants. So he wants to see if incentives are increased, what will happen to the efficiency. He's not sure. So he's not sure if the efficiency is going to. He wants to do that. Before he introduces this, he would like to be sure that the idea works. So he asks a researcher to help him. So in this case, the owner is faced with a dilemma that, okay, I have got few restaurants. Some are having a good profit margin and some are not. And he says that if I introduce certain profit soups and incentives, will my efficiency in my restaurant will increase or not? So before he actually does that, what he wants to do is he wants the researcher to conduct the research and tell him that if this is a good option or not. The solution, say, this is, as we see, it's a causal study. It can be a causal hypothesis testing study, but generally it's what we call as a field experiment. We're using one or two restaurants we can use, and we can manipulate the incentives. Here we trying to, as you can see, one thing is for Claire. We're saying when we're trying to, some theory we're trying to test. We are saying if we increase the incentives, will the efficiency will increase or not. So when we are doing this, then we're basically looking at a hypothesis testing, correct? And the other thing is, if we are doing it and doing it within, and we're doing this manipulation, it is an experiment. So when there is a manipulation, and then it's a hypothesis testing, and there is a relationship we're trying to see, there's a theory we're trying to test, and if you were trying to manipulate, then an experiment. The only thing is, if it's a field experiment or not. Why it is a field experiment? Because the researcher, what he'll do is he's trying to manipulate what he's given is he's going to take only two restaurants and trying to manipulate the incentives that are there and see what is the effect of the incentives. So again, it's a field experiment. He is not conducted in a lab. He is not testing this in a lab, but actually is conducted in the lab, in the actual restaurant. So it's a field experiment. It's a hypothesis thing, and we'll talk about why it's causal. We'll come back to later. We see that if this is if this causes by, that is, he's trying to see that if he increases the incentive plan, will it increase the effectiveness, efficiency of the the restaurant. So an increase in, will he find an increase in profit margin for those restaurants? Because the manipulation, there is some researchers' interference, of course, and the natural flow of events are being studied. So we are, as we said, we're going to manipulate, and there is it's a lab experiment, it's a field experiment. There will be some manipulation. As you can say, if there is, the incentives will be manipulated. So the interference of the researcher is a moderate level, and the natural flow of the work is controlled or affected. So as far as the time horizon is concerned, the study is considered to be as a longitudinal study. So the data is obtained on sales, profits, etc. before the manipulation and after the manipulation. So this study, again, we focused on one variable, which is the variable that is incentives. He wants to see if I increase incentives, what will happen to the profit margin of that restaurant. But before he does that, he's collected data from those organizations as to before the manipulation of the incentives or offering the incentives, what was the profit margin of that organization. And once he has introduced the incentives, what is the profit margin there. So twice the data was collected, the data before the manipulation of the profit margin and after the manipulation of the profit margin. So it's a longitudinal study. It is the manipulation, the interference is moderate to high because the incentives are being manipulated. It's a field experiment because it's being conducted at the actual scenario, actual place. But again, since there is some manipulation, it's called an experiment, and it is hypothesis testing because we have some kind of a theory to test, such as if we increase the incentives, the effectiveness or the profit margin of the organization will increase or not. So this is an example where by the researchers is trying to establish what we call as hypothesis testing, causal study, with hypothesis testing being done, where field experiment is being conducted and the interference is moderate to high in this kind of a scenario. One more scenario, a much simpler one, where we say a manager is intrigued, is interested to know why some people seem to enjoy from work and get energized by it, while others find troublesome and frustrating. Here the researcher wants to know that why some people enjoy work and why people are feel frustrated going to work. So this study, he says, this is what we call as, so we are looking at what are the different factors which are influencing people which basically make them enjoy the work, and what are the factors which make them not to enjoy work. So this is considered as a correlational study, and correlational hypothesis testing, because again we're trying to not focus at just one variable. We're looking at more than one variable. We're not looking at just one variable, multiple variables. But again, we have some kind of a hypothesis here. It's a field study. We're not manipulating anything. We're just trying to look at the different factors which might influence the employees for working, for enjoying the work. And we are, as we said, it is a one-shot study, and the unit of analysis is individual here because the data is collected at an individual level. So this study, again, if you look at it, it's basically focused on why managers enjoy, why some people enjoy work and energized by, while some others are. So we had to find out what are the factors which make people enjoy work, and what are the factors which make them not enjoy work. So we are looking at different factors. We want to test that. It's a correlational kind of a study, where it's again it's a field study. We're not manipulating anything. On the other hand, it is again it's not a longitudinal study. It's a one-shot study. We're not seeing before and after. We're just trying to establish the people who have what are the factors which influence the people to enjoy the work. And it's the unit of analysis is Hindu Urdu. So let's recap as to what we have talked about today. We talked about some of the research design elements, such as study setting, time horizon, and unit of analysis. And in the end, what we did was we give you 3 or 4 scenarios. Some more scenarios will be available in the book, so you can get back and look into those scenarios for further information. With this, we conclude this session, and next time when we meet, we're going to talk about some more elements of the research design. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.